His beard, of 3 months' growth, darker in colour, his eyes hazel and somewhat bloodshot, and his complexion the colour of watery milk. His buttocks and thighs were muscular, but his lower legs were thin and bandy. He was not, it must be said, strictly handsome. His perfectly enormous nose earned him the nickname of Le Roi Grand-Nez, but he made up for it with his grace and elegance, and with the multicoloured silks and velvets which left his courtiers dazzled. He had beautiful manners and irresistible charm. He loved conversation and could discuss any subject relating to the arts and sciences, not so much because he had studied them all deeply, as because of his quite extraordinary memory. It seemed that he remembered everything that he ever read or was ever told. Always laughing, it was clear that he loved every moment of his kingship, revelling in all the pleasures that it could provide, hunting, feasting, jousting, and above all, the ready availability of any number of beautiful women. He was quintessentially a man of the Renaissance, with a passion for art and a degree of wealth that enabled him to indulge it to the full. Before long, he was celebrated as one of the greatest patrons of his age. He brought Leonardo da Vinci from Italy, installing him in splendid apartments at Amboise, where the great man lived till his death. At various times he also welcomed Andrea del Sarto, Rosso Fiorentino, known to the French as Maître Roux, and countless other Italian painters, sculptors and decorators, including Benvenuto Cellini, who carved the medallion from which Titian was later to paint his famous portrait. Of them all, however, his favourite was Francesco Primaticcio, whom he employed, particularly at Fontainebleau, with spectacular success. Fontainebleau was always his favourite residence. It was indeed his home, insofar as he had one. But Francis was restless by nature, and he was also a compulsive builder. He largely reconstructed the chateau of Amboise and Blois and created Chambord, that most magnificent of all hunting boxes, quite possibly with the help of Leonardo himself. In all of them, again and again, we see his emblem, the salamander, often surrounded by flames. Its legendary attribute of being impervious to fire made it the perfect symbol of endurance. In Paris itself, he transformed the Louvre from a medieval fortress into a vast Renaissance palace and personally financed the new Hôtel de Ville in order to have full control over its design. Then there was literature. Francis was a dedicated man of letters, with a reverence for books which he had inherited from his mother, Louise of Savoy. She had taught him fluent Italian and Spanish. His weak spot was Latin, with which he was never entirely at ease. He was a personal friend of François Rabelais, for whose unforgettable giant Pantagruel he is said to have provided the inspiration. His philosophy, according to Rabelais, was rooted in a certain gaiety of mind pickled in the scorn of fortuitous things, whatever that may mean. To be his chief librarian he appointed Guillaume Boudet, who, at the age of 23, had renounced a life of debauchery and pleasure to become the greatest French scholar of the day, and he employed special agents all over North Italy to seek out manuscripts and the relatively new printed books, just as others were seeking out paintings, sculptures, and objets d'art. In 1537 he signed a decree known as the Ordonnance de Montpellier, providing that one copy of every book published or sold in France should be lodged in the Royal Library, a right that is now enjoyed by the Bibliothèque Nationale, of which that library formed the nucleus. At the time of his death it was to contain over 3,000 volumes, many of them looted from the Sforza Library in Milan, and was open to any scholar who wished to use it. Another decree, the Ordonnance de Villers-Cotterêts of 1539, made French, rather than Latin, the official language of the country, and instituted a register of births, marriages, and deaths in every parish. To be Chancellor of a new college for Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, Francis invited the greatest humanist of his day, Erasmus of Rotterdam, and Boudet wrote a letter urging him to accept the invitation. "This monarch," he wrote, "is not only a Frank, which is in itself a glorious title, he is also Francis, a name borne by a king for the first time and, one can prophesy, predestined for great things. He is educated in letters, which is unusual with our kings, and also possesses a natural eloquence, wit, tact, and an easy, pleasant manner. Nature, in short, has endowed him with the rarest gifts of body and mind. He likes to admire and to praise princes of old who have distinguished themselves by their lofty intellects and brilliant deeds, and he is fortunate to have as much